Thank you, Richard. Ladies and gentlemen, can I firstly say I can't resist just giving you one anecdote. Richard asked me if I minded talking while you were eating. And it took me back about 12 years ago. Dr. Henry Kissinger, who to many still probably remembered, came to Australia, sponsored, I might say, by another bank, which we won't talk about. And because I wasn't with the ANZ, I was allowed to sit next to him. The organisers said to him, "Do you mind talking while people eat?" And he said, "No problem at all," he said. "In fact, I will eat while I talk as well." Which he did. And I was incredibly impressed by this until I got back to my office and realised most of my right arm, or left arm as it was covered with most of what he hadn't eaten. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an enormous honour to come to Hobart. I confess to you that I have spoken in Hobart a few times, but I have never spoken in a car sales room. And I must say, if all car sales rooms are this beautiful, I'm happy to do it at any time. So thank you for having me. What I wanted to talk to you, because I had a look at the guest list, and a wonderful guest list, and so many of you are involved, whether it be as directors, as budding directors, or in business generally. I thought I'd actually talk about being a director as a profession rather than a part-time job. I regard myself extremely privileged that regularly I'm asked, mainly because I'm getting old, what my life as a company director is like. Often people come to my office, and indeed I actually have a quota of how many people I see a week, because so many ask, to just find out what they should do in the near future to become a director. The discussion follows almost the same line every time. It's usually a 50-year-old or thereabout who tells me he or she has reached the peak of their professional career as a lawyer or an accountant, or has achieved the highest role that they wish in a public company or government department, and it's time to start a new chapter. To this point, I always feel enormously commendable. Here is a person after a distinguished career at the right time, planning to change to a new chapter and basically get involved in a wonderful profession. It's what is often said at this point, however, that alarms me. Usually this part goes something like this. I've worked hard, I've travelled a lot, I've led a lot of people and/or transactions. It's time to take it a bit easier. Improve the golf game. Smell the roses. By the way, those two are the most favourites. There are others who want to do other things. So what I want is a couple of directorships just to keep my hand in. There is no bigger switch off to me than the last part of this encounter. I don't object to people improving their golf game because I can't. I don't object to people smelling roses because I haven't done it. But embarking upon what I regard as a great profession, indeed my profession, just because one wants to fill up some time and remain a little bit involved, I object to strongly. I thought today I would talk to you about why I regard the directorship as really a full-time job, whether you do it partly or not, but in any way a profession. You might ask me, if it is a profession, who can become a director of an entity? And I believe anybody can, but they need certain things, and I've distilled it to 3. I think the first thing you need to be a good director is an interest in the enterprise that you're actually entering into. What does that enterprise do? How does it operate? Has to inspire you. I should emphasize here that when I talk about have an interest in it, I don't mean a material one. I'm talking about an interest as in your thinking, your attitude to that company or that enterprise. I confess that I've sat next to many who've taken on various positions because it was good for their CV, it was good for what they were doing, or they thought it would look good in order to get somewhere else. Almost invariably, their great donation that they can give to that business is inhibited. I confess to all of you that I have sat a couple of times on things I shouldn't have taken because I wasn't that interested. And I tried hard, I must tell you, but I really was not the performer that I wanted to be because I wasn't that interested. In my view, the first thing to being a successful professional director is take on things that give you joy, that you have a passion for and an interest in. The second thing, and I say this tentatively because looking at your CVs, some of you may not agree, but I believe to be a good director, you need some financial understanding, training, or ability. And if you haven't got it, you have to have as your partner or maybe a good checkbook to get it. Because it seems to me that if one doesn't understand finance at all, one is somewhat at a disadvantage in the world in which we live. And I want to make it quite clear, I'm not suggesting you have to be an accountant to be a director. Quite the contrary. Nor do you need to be a lawyer, by the way. What you need, however, is a general understanding of what is going on in the corporate side and the corporate, basically money side of a business. I mean, if you look at the terrible things of presiding over insolvency, I just cannot understand how you can cope with that without some smattering, some ability to understand accounting. The third thing I think you need is a training and appreciation of what a director does. And I want to make it clear, I am not here paid by Audi, nor for that matter the AICD. But I do believe in the courses that the AICD do. I believe incredibly important is the situation, and I congratulate the 9 who graduated today, to have a smattering of what it's all about, to understand what a board does, the role of the board in relation to management, what a director should be involved in, and so on. Many of these, I acknowledge, are judgmental, but if you don't have a bit of training, how do you ask the question? In my opinion, as a chancellor of a university, one of the most worrying things is often large organisations like universities, in fact, are running under boards who don't have that training. And 10 years ago, when I became Chancellor of the University of New South Wales, I said to the then 22 others who sat on that board, we now only have 14 and me, but basically I said, get trained or get off. And I might say in typical academic form, Richard, they all went off to the AICD and 3 of them came top. How you come top 3, I think they shared the prize. And they did extremely well, and I might say our board became more functional. These 3 requirements, in my opinion, are enough to get one through the door of the profession. But in addition, I believe a good director has a number of other things to achieve. Again, not an ad for the AICD, a good director needs continuous education. I need continuous education. I find it quite amazing how many people believe that the world stopped when they left university or they first did the AICD course. My AICD course didn't exist, I'm so ancient, and I got my testama in the post. I didn't even ask for it. But let me tell you, since then, I've been very involved in updating my thinking, and believe me, a lot does occur. Whether it be following regulations, new accounting developments, concepts of what's right and wrong in the community, questions that we as directors should be each looking at, continuous education to me is an essential thing. The second thing I believe as a profession that a good director needs is people to talk to. And I can listen, as I listened as we came in, that clearly you're lucky enough to have a lot of people, many of whom are in this room, to talk about things. It's interesting for me, who are now chairman of companies, that I have 2 wonderful offices available to me at no cost. And I actually decided, well, why am I paying for my own office? I'll go and sit there. I lasted just under 1 day in this beautiful palace that one of the companies provides me. It was so quiet. There was no one there. I realized there was no one certainly there who did what I do as a non-executive director. And I retreated back to the chambers we have of 20 non-executive directors and continue to love every minute of it. The second thing I believe a good director needs is a cohort to discuss problems, just as doctors do, as academics do, as lawyers do, etc. And I will fight till the end to be able to have a way of talking about things, because frankly we face similar problems wherever geographically we are, and indeed whichever companies we're in. I want to make it clear I'm not against home offices as long as I don't have to have one. My home office is wonderful. I've fitted it out. It looks out over Sydney Harbour, but it is lonely. And I can't imagine that unless I can't actually physically get out, that I would actually use it. As a profession, I believe we as company directors have a number of obligations which comes with the things I've talked about. The first and foremost is to treat other company directors decently and with respect. As a lawyer, I've noticed how lawyers treat lawyers, and I don't want to follow that. But I believe we as company directors are leaders of companies within Australia and indeed within the world. We need to play our part, as I believe it's an obligation, to assist others in our profession, to help them get to where they want to go, and to assist them overall, in my opinion, with how basically to do things. Many of you would be aware of the assessments that are now the prevalent thing, and I believe in them, in terms of directors. We do them every 2 years. I don't know how often you do them. I don't know how many of you have recently looked at some of those assessments. I looked at one year ago, I'm not on that board anymore, and it asked me to rate, grading 1 to 5, what I thought of each of my fellow directors. And I thought in depth about this, regarding as a profession, it is important for me to help those people and to be helped by them. How come I was suddenly grading them? If I scored each of them well and they scored me not so well, I would have looked terrible, thought I. If I scored someone below what they thought they were worth, they would probably take it out on me in the next 12 months. And how do I score myself? I think I'm extraordinarily good, because if I don't feel that, why didn't I act better? Does that mean that if I score myself 5, I'm an egomaniac, or 1, I've got some insecurity? In my opinion, these sort of assessments are vital but should never be done that way. To me, consistent with what I am putting to you, we owe it to our directors, our fellow directors, to work as a team. And if we're looking for assessment, like Aussie rules or whatever, it is to make the team better. If one of us is dominating, it's not because we're bad in dominating. We should try and make us less dominant to make the team work better. But above all, we should be holding hands, because basically we're in it together to try and make it better. The second thing is, I believe we have an obligation to mentor. I think if we don't mentor, it damages our profession, and indeed it ruins the trail of great people coming behind us. I'm definitely not sure, by the way, how mentorship fits in with playing golf and smelling the roses. But as I said, that's a turn-off for me. I believe we have to help people to help themselves to work out how their board should operate. To me, I believe you will learn the following in mentorship. First, in my experience, most of my mentees have superior qualities in some way to myself. I've learned so much from the younger. I've learned so much from, I might say, women. I have learned so much from those from different geographies. Each has contributed to my own thinking as the mentor on how I basically should carry out what I do. I also believe one can help through mentorship to teach people not to make the same mistakes that we've made. And I won't embarrass you by asking anyone who's never made a mistake to stick up their hand, because if they do, I won't believe them. The fact of the matter is we do make mistakes, and the importance is to not only make sure that we take that risk and actually do something with it that's positive, but also to pass on as mentors to the younger ones. I should add here that I really believe in what the AICD has done in their mentorship program. I believe the concept of mentoring women to come into boards is not only a positive, but the right thing to do. I think one day victory will be declared, and basically that mentorship program should remain, but be for men as well. I think the third thing that we have an obligation to do is to have a broad range of contributions to our society. I, of course, am now an expert on what's happening in Hobart because I've been here 72 minutes. But listening to you as I walked into this wonderful showroom, I realised your sense of community. Half your luck. I don't feel that as much when I go to functions in Sydney. But community is vital. My great fear is that as one gets older, you actually become narrower. And I really worry how effective you can be as a director if you become very narrow. The beauty, in my opinion, of being involved in one's community, in doing other things, is not only that it's good, but that you benefit from being able to broaden your aspect on all the things that you have to deliver as a good company director. I should also add that when I was a lawyer, I used to read, I don't know whether they do it in Tasmania, the polls on who are the favourite professions. And I have to be honest, as a lawyer, I was a bit upset as we started to drift down in the polls. After I was a lawyer, I became a merchant banker, only to find that merchant bankers are even lower on the thing. You can imagine how I felt becoming a company director to find we're even lower than merchant bankers. This is important for us to redress. Whether those polls are correct or not doesn't matter. Getting out into the community, as I said, broadens the mind, but it also allows us, in my opinion, to contribute the most vital thing that we can, which is our own knowledge, our own experience, our own business judgment, and our ability to help, say, not-for-profits to get to the next stage. All of you would have read the AICD work on this, and it's impressive, and I'm positive if I went down the various tables, I'd be amazed at the contribution you all make. But to me, the most important thing is because we're professionals, that we enjoy it, we get involved in it, and we savour it. I believe that as a profession, and being professional, we're entitled to some benefits. And I'm not talking about money here. To me, it is up to us, if we are a profession, to determine how many boards we want to go on. I am tired of people telling me in particular, although I'm now apparently compliant, that I'm too busy. I don't ever remember going into a busy doctor's surgery and telling the doctor who's busy churning out people, you're too busy. Nor have I said it to my dentist, although I do remember visiting a dentist in a country town in northern New South Wales who didn't seem to have any customers and worrying that he was too unbusy. The fact is, as a profession, we must decide what is for us. And obviously we will be diligent and therefore will limit it. To me, the only people who can tell you how much is too much as a director is yourself, your family, and your co-directors. The others do not have a right to do so. Similarly, I believe, if we are professional, it is up to us to determine whether we're independent or not. I would defy all of you to define what independence means. Often, it's easy. I mean, somebody is not independent if they happen to be the chairman, chief executive, company secretary, and everything else. Absolutely. But in general terms, it's an attitude of mind. And I believe as professionals, talking to the people around us, talking to our peers, it's for us to determine whether that conflict exists. It's for us to be true to our thinking and actually determine these sort of things. Having talked about the profession, I'd just like to comment on a couple of other issues that someone suggested I should do while I'm here. Somebody has asked me, as a professional, what is the biggest issue on my mind as a director? And having thought about it, I'd like to put to you that the biggest issue any of us are dealing with, unless I might say it's a family business like this wonderful business, is the question of whether we're governing for the short term or the long term. I don't know the answer. All of you would know, particularly in the big companies, that the bulk of those who own shares in big companies on the stock exchange are in fact long-term holders, and the bulk of those who sell and buy shares are short-term holders. The bulk of those who talk about the companies are short-term holders. The long-term holders, in my opinion, don't talk enough. So the question becomes, who are we governing for? As professionals, it's an issue we need to talk about. My own view, for what it's worth, is I would like to govern and look at the long term. If you're a short-term holder, you choose when you come in and you come off the train, so to speak. Of course, there are an awful lot of issues that arise from this. Can I keep paying dividends if I'm a long-term holder and there's an opportunity to build a large building like this, which may take capital? Should I be trying to make profits quickly or indeed lurch them forwards so that they go over time? This is a big issue, but an issue that we as professionals, I think, must instigate, talk about, and come to a view. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the growing trend worldwide to place on us as directors regulatory obligations. I don't know whether you get to talk to a lot of regulators down here. My guess is you do, and if you're not, you will. Regulators seem to think that if you can make sure that directors fear going to jail about something, they'll make sure that the 52,000 people, in my case, who work for the bank will be okay and will do the right thing. The logic defies me. It is physically impossible in any business of size for those on the board to watch every step that everybody does. And if they did, I'd like to put to you, the company would be very restrained in its growth. And by the way, people like me may not be the right people to be on the board because there may be better business judgments or better policemen available. To me, the most important thing is that for us to educate the regulators, for us to talk to them, to savour their thinking and to help them, to understand what we do as professionals. We oversight, we assist, we choose people to do things, we give ideas on strategy, but generally as directors, we don't run the company. I should add, if I may, just as I come near the end, and as I see this fine motor car here, that the other day as I drove in to the ANZ Bank in not as fine a motor car, as I got out, the man who opens the gate there shouted out, "The boss is here." All the way up in the lift, and it's 25 floors in Sydney at the ANZ Bank, all the way up, I kept thinking, I'm the chairman, am I the boss? And when I got upstairs, I realised, and indeed told him on the way out, I'm not the boss. The boss is the CEO. Yes, I hire and fire the CEO. Yes, I watch the CEO, but I don't run the company. He's now doing an AICD course and has left opening the garage for somebody else. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many things I can talk about, but I hope if I leave you with anything, it is this. You live in a wonderful place doing great business. Just listening to all of you out there, you are wonderfully rounded people. To me, we should continue and be proud of the profession of being directors. We should not just be smelling roses or getting our golf game, and if we do that, we do it like any rounded person, in proportion to the obligations of our profession. But above all, we should be involved in our community, helping mentor those who are coming behind us, and also, I might say, those around us and working with us. And in my opinion, there will always be ups and downs with regulators, and indeed good and bad days, so to speak, at the office. But the role of a director is a wonderfully round one, a wonderful one to contribute, and absolutely, in my opinion, a good adjunct to smelling roses and golf, and indeed better in most respects.